Welcome to this deep dive. Today, our mission is to unpack a really uncomfortable reality about human nature.
Yeah, it's definitely not a light topic today.
No, it's really not. We are looking at how resentment manages to hide in our closest circles, and more importantly, how you can actually spot it before it does real damage.
Right.
Our source material for this entire discussion is this single, incredibly evocative piece of text. It's a short excerpt titled "The Gilded Mask of Envy."
And it is just a phenomenal starting point, honestly, because it doesn't bother with the obvious, cinematic versions of betrayal.
The cartoon villains.
Exactly. It goes straight for the insidious stuff. I mean, we are analyzing a dynamic that plays out in living rooms, boardrooms, family dinners, like every single day.
Yeah, everywhere.
And if we don't understand the underlying mechanics of how this works, we're basically flying blind in our most important relationships.
I totally agree. So I want you, the listener, to picture someone specific in your life right now. We all have one.
Oh, absolutely.
This is the person who always claps when you succeed. You know, they smile when you speak, they consistently congratulate you, and they always make a point to ask about your goals.
The ultimate cheerleader.
Right, but every time you walk away from an interaction with them, you feel this strange, unspoken tension.
Yeah, that weird energy drain.
Exactly. It's this subtle drain on your energy, and for the longest time, you probably couldn't even put your finger on why. Well, today's source text explains the exact psychological machinery behind that tension.
And the stakes here are really high. The text we're looking at isn't just, describing a toxic personality type that you can easily categorize and just avoid.
Right.
It's really pulling back the curtain on a universal human vulnerability. It challenges our most basic assumptions about loyalty.
So let's get right into the core paradox the text presents. It gives us this image of the supportive saboteur.
Yeah, that phrase is just chilling.
It really is. The text describes someone who performs all the outward actions of a cheerleader, clapping, smiling, asking about your progress, while deep inside, they harbor a genuine hope that you never become more successful than they are.
It forces us to confront a duality that most of us are, frankly, very reluctant to acknowledge.
I've been trying to visualize how this actually plays out in real life, and the best analogy I could come up with is having a toxic treadmill buddy.
Ooh, treadmill buddy, I like that.
Yeah, so imagine you're at the gym with a friend, right?
Yeah.
You're running side by side on adjacent machines. Outwardly, they are playing the part perfectly. They're looking over, shouting, you got this, keep going, push harder.
The perfect workout partner.
Right, on the surface. But secretly, every time you look away to grab your water bottle, they reach over and bump up the incline on your machine by just a fraction of a percent.
Oh, wow.
Right, they are actively engineering the environment so that you burn out first, which guarantees they get to feel like the superior runner, all while playing the role of your biggest fan.
That analogy captures the dual processing perfectly, actually. Because the outward cheering and the inward sabotage, they seem entirely contradictory to us. Because we're conditioned to view human emotions as monolithic. We just assume someone is either a purely good friend or a purely malicious enemy.
It's black and white.
Exactly. But the human psyche is highly compartmentalized. I mean, the surface level support, the clapping, the smiling, that's a socialized script.
What do you mean by script exactly?
Well, from early childhood, we are trained in how to behave when someone else experiences good fortune. It becomes a deeply ingrained social reflex.
Right, because it's the behavior we know will keep us integrated into the tribe. If a friend gets a good grade, you say good job.
Yes.
If you don't do that, you risk social exclusion.
Exactly. That is the function of the neocortex, the logical, social part of the brain managing our outward presentation. But beneath that socialized script lies much older, much more primal system.
The survival instincts.
Right. The ego, which is driven by the amygdala, it doesn't care about social etiquette at all. It cares about status, safety, and your relative positioning within the hierarchy.
Okay, so it's constantly tracking where you stand.
Yes. So when your success suddenly threatens their perceived status in the tribe, that primal brain reacts with a self-preservation instinct. That's where the hidden hope that you fail originates.
Wow.
They're literally running two conflicting operating systems at the exact same time.
See, here is where I really have to challenge the premise of our source material, though.
Okay, let's hear it.
Because the text explicitly claims that the terrifying part isn't that these envious people exist, but that most of them don't even realize they're doing it.
Yes.
I find that very hard to swallow. I mean, envy is a visceral, burning sensation. How is it neurologically or psychologically possible to subconsciously hope someone fails without knowing you're doing it?
I get why you'd say that. It sounds implausible until you look at the mechanics of cognitive dissonance. Cognitive dissonance happens when a person holds two contradictory beliefs or values simultaneously, and that creates this intense psychological pain.
Right, the brain hates that.
It hates it. In this case, the two beliefs are, one, I am a loving, supportive friend, and two, I am deeply resentful of this person's success.
And you can't be both.
Exactly. The human brain cannot tolerate that friction.
So it has to pick one to believe, and it obviously picks the one that doesn't make them look like a monster.
You nailed it. The brain is relentlessly efficient at protecting its own self-image. Admitting to envy feels shameful.
Yeah, nobody wants to be the jealous friend.
Right. Acknowledging that you are petty or threatened by a friend's progress destroys your identity as a good person. So to resolve the dissonance, the subconscious mind literally builds a firewall.
A firewall against its own feelings.
Yes, it represses the malicious intent, pushing the envy below the level of conscious awareness. The person bumping up the incline on your treadmill, they likely tell themselves a completely different story.
Like what?
They might genuinely believe they are just challenging you because they care about your fitness. By remaining unaware of their true motive, their ego is shielded, and they get to maintain their self-image.
So they aren't necessarily lying to us, they are successfully lying to themselves.
Exactly.
Which honestly makes the situation vastly more dangerous. I mean, conscious malice can be reasoned with. You can confront a movie villain who knows they're the villain.
Right.
But confronting a saboteur who genuinely, deeply believes they are your biggest cheerleader, that feels like fighting a ghost.
It operates entirely in the shadows. The resentment is still there, it's simmering under the surface, but because the conscious mind refuses to acknowledge it as envy, the emotion has to find an alternative, acceptable route to escape.
The pressure has to vent somehow.
Yes.
Which brings up a huge question. If that resentment is trapped behind a psychological firewall, how does it actually leak out?
With disguises.
Yes, the text has a fascinating answer for this. It states, quote, envy rarely introduces itself as hatred. It arrives dressed as friendship, as concern, as advice, as harmless jokes.
So good.
It puts on a disguise to get past the ego's defenses.
And those disguises are what make this dynamic so incredibly difficult to navigate. The envious friend subconscious is looking for a way to stunt your growth while maintaining total plausible deniability.
Let's break down these disguises, specifically advice and concern, because those are the trickiest to parse.
They really are.
In my head, I picture this kind of disguised concern as a governor on an engine.
Okay, I see where you're going.
It isn't designed to destroy the engine, it's just designed to artificially limit how fast it can go. But for the listener sitting across a coffee table from a friend, how can they distinguish between someone giving genuine protective advice and someone installing a governor to hold them back?
It's subtle, but the distinction lies in the underlying psychological function of the interaction. Let's look at the mechanics of genuine support first.
Yeah.
A friend who is genuinely protective wants to increase your agency. If you tell them you are starting a new business, they will voice legitimate risks, sure, but they will follow it up with scaffolding.
Scaffolding, like building you up.
Right. They might say, well, the market for that is highly saturated right now. Let's look at your business plan and figure out how to differentiate your product so you don't get lost in the noise.
Got it. So they are identifying a threat, but their goal is to arm you against it. They're helping you build a stronger strategy.
Exactly. Now contrast that with the disguised envy manifesting as concern. The function here is not to prepare you, it is to paralyze you.
Paralyze you.
Yes. The disguised concern relies heavily on projecting anxiety to erode your confidence. It sounds more like, are you sure you're ready to leave your stable job for this?
Oh, wow. Yeah.
You seem so stressed lately, and most small businesses fail in the first year. I just don't want to see you ruin your finances. Maybe you should just wait a few years.
It sounds so loving on the surface. They are wrapping their sabotage in the language of care.
That is the plausible deniability at work. If you get defensive, they can immediately retreat to, hey, I'm just looking out for you.
Right.
But the mechanism of that advice is designed to induce doubt. The text uses a very deliberate phrase here, warning that if you aren't paying attention, you'll mistake poison for loyalty.
Mistake poison for loyalty.
Yeah.
The reason that is so effective is because of the dosage.
What do you mean?
Well, if someone hands you a glass of obvious poison, you throw it in their face. But if they just slip a drop of it into your water every single day in the form of a hyper-cautious piece of advice, or a passive-aggressive, harmless joke about your ambition.
Oh, absolutely.
Over time, your confidence just slowly degrades. You start second-guessing your own capabilities, you decide to stay at your current job or not take the risk.
Yep.
And the envious friend gets to keep you safely at their level, all while patting themselves on the back for being such a loyal, grounding influence in your life.
It is a profound manipulation of trust. And it is vital to recognize that this dynamic doesn't just happen with anyone. The text is very particular about identifying the primary vectors for this disguised effort.
Yeah, that is a crucial pivot in the source material. It shifts from how envy operates to who is most likely to harbor it.
Right.
The text points out that human beings compare themselves constantly, but not with strangers. It specifies that we compare ourselves with friends, with coworkers, and with brothers. There is a very specific radius to this resentment.
The underlying psychological framework here is social comparison theory. It was originally developed by Leon Festinger in the 1950s.
Okay.
And the theory posits that humans have a fundamental drive to evaluate their own opinions and abilities. And we do this by comparing ourselves to others. But, and this is the key, we do not compare ourselves to a random sample of humanity.
No, that would be exhausting.
Exactly. We only evaluate ourselves against our immediate peer group. We require a shared baseline to make the comparison meaningful.
Let me test a hypothesis here regarding that baseline.
Go for it.
I think about this in terms of variables in an experiment. I feel zero envy toward an astronaut who just landed on Mars.
Of course not.
Right, because I didn't go to space camp, I don't have a degree in astrophysics, I don't work at NASA. The variables of our lives are so entirely different that their outcome has literally no bearing on my own self-worth.
The astronaut is operating in an entirely different reality. There is no point of comparison.
But if I look at the coworker sitting one desk over, the variables are suddenly identical.
Yep.
We're the same age, we went to similar state schools, we started at the company in the exact same month, and we have the same resources. If that coworker suddenly lands a massive promotion, secures a much higher salary, gets the corner office.
That hurts.
Yeah, because the variables were the same, but the outcome was vastly different. That is incredibly painful to process.
That is the proximity principle in action. The closer the proximity, the higher the psychological threat. Your coworker, your childhood friend, your sibling, these people represent a parallel life path.
A parallel path.
Yes. The text specifically highlights that we compare ourselves with people who remind them of who they could have become. That shared starting point is what makes your success so devastating to their ego.
It shatters the illusion that we're all just victims of the same circumstances. When you're both at the same level, complaining about the same boss or the same bad economy, there's a mutual comfort there. It's like a shared alibi.
Oh, a shared alibi is the perfect term for it. It's a collective agreement that, things are just tough, or success is just for lucky people. It functions almost like crabs in a bucket.
Right, pulling each other down.
As long as all the crabs are stuck at the bottom, there is harmony. But the moment you break out of that baseline, the moment you start a thriving business, or get in incredible physical shape, or build a remarkably healthy marriage, you destroy that shared alibi.
You prove that it was entirely possible to climb out of the bucket all along.
Exactly.
Which naturally leads us to the final, most profound realization in the source text. When you shatter that alibi, what is the envious friend actually reacting to?
It's not you.
Right. The text concludes that this silent resentment begins, quote, not because you did something wrong, but because your progress reminds them of their excuses.
This is where we get into the concept of the locus of control in psychology.
Locus of control, okay. Let's define that.
So, a person with an external locus of control believes that their life is dictated by outside forces, luck, the economy, other people holding them back.
They're at the mercy of the world.
Yes. Whereas a person with an internal locus of control believes they are primarily responsible for their own outcomes.
So when a friend starts deploying these harmless jokes or feeding me paralyzing advice disguised as concern, my instinct is usually to look inward.
Right, to blame yourself.
Yeah, I ask, what did I do wrong? Was I bragging too much? Am I being insensitive? But understanding the locus of control completely flips the script. The tension isn't about my behavior at all, it is entirely about their internal psychological battle.
Your progress is acting as an unavoidable mirror. When your friend looks at your new promotion or your new healthy lifestyle, they are forced to confront the reality of their own stagnation.
They can't look away from it.
No, because your success proves that their external locus of control is a fiction. If someone with the same background and the same resources as them can achieve greatness, then they can no longer blame the universe.
Right.
They have to face the uncomfortable truth that they didn't put in the work, or they let fear stop them.
They are forced to look at their own excuses, like, I don't have time, or it's too risky, or I'm just not built for that. My progress proves those narratives are hollow.
It shatters their alibi.
But this creates a massive practical dilemma for the listener.
How so?
Well, if my success forces the people I love to experience the pain of confronting their own excuses, the empathetic response is to try to mitigate that pain. So does this mean I am supposed to shrink myself? Should I downplay my achievements or hide my progress just to keep the peace and protect the ego of my closest friends?
That is the trap that highly empathetic, conscientious people fall into constantly. They dim their own light to avoid casting a shadow on the people around them.
It feels like the kind thing to do.
It feels kind, but the answer is an unequivocal no. You cannot shrink yourself to accommodate someone else's unmanaged insecurities.
Because doing so validates their external locus of control. It just proves that keeping everyone comfortable is more important than actualizing your potential.
Exactly. And furthermore, you are not responsible for how another adult reacts to a mirror. You didn't construct the mirror. Your hard work and progress simply happen to be reflected.
That's a great way to put it.
If they choose to throw stones at that mirror by using disguised envy, subtle sabotage, or undermining concern that is a symptom of their own unresolved pain, it is a reflection of their refusal to do their own internal work.
So shrinking doesn't even help them.
No, stunting your own growth to save them from facing their reality doesn't help them at all. It just ensures that you both stay at the bottom of the bucket.
Wow. Let's take a step back and look at the whole picture we've painted today, because this completely changes how we evaluate our inner circles.
It really reframes everything.
We started with the confusing paradox of the supportive saboteur, the friend who outwardly cheers while inwardly hoping you stumble. We dismantled the idea that they're conscious villains, recognizing that their brain is actively hiding their resentment behind a firewall of cognitive dissonance to protect their self-image.
And then we examined how that repressed resentment escapes through the wardrobe of envy, slipping past our defenses as overly cautious advice, veiled concern, and passive-aggressive jokes designed to act as a governor on our ambition.
Mistaking poison for loyalty.
Right. And we explored the proximity principle, understanding that this hidden sabotage comes from our peers, because our shared baseline makes our success a direct threat to their ego.
And finally, we arrived at the realization that their silent resentment is nothing more than a reaction to the mirror of excuses. Your progress removes their alibi. You aren't doing anything wrong by succeeding, and you certainly shouldn't shrink yourself to manage their discomfort.
So as we conclude, I want to leave you with one final thought to process.
Okay, let's hear it.
We've spent this entire deep dive analyzing the text from a defensive posture.
Right.
We've discussed how to protect ourselves from the clapping friend, the jealous coworker, the subtly undermining sibling. We've talked about how to spot the gilded mask of envy in others.
Yeah, our focus has been entirely outward today.
But if we accept the premise of the text and the underlying social comparison theory, we must acknowledge that humans compare themselves constantly. This is a universal primal trait. It is wired into our evolutionary biology.
Nobody gets a free pass.
Exactly. Which means no one is immune to it, not even us. So I want to flip the perspective of this entire deep dive for a moment.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Think about your own recent interactions. The next time you find yourself offering some highly cautious, protective advice to appear taking a big risk,
Right.
or making a quick, harmless joke to bring an ambitious friend back down to earth, or feeling a strange, tight knot in your stomach when your sibling hits a major milestone. I want you to pause and ask yourself a very uncomfortable question.
Turning the mirror.
Is it possible that without even realizing it, driven by your own ego and your own unexamined excuses, you are the one wearing the gilded mask of envy?
Wow. That is a staggering thought to walk away with. It forces a totally different level of self-awareness, recognizing that we might be the treadmill buddy bumping up the incline for someone else without ever admitting it to ourselves.
It's hard to look at, but it's necessary.
I really appreciate you taking the time to break down the mechanics of this with me. And to you listening, I encourage you to look closely at your own circles, your own reactions, and your own reflections this week. Keep questioning and keep digging deeper.